First time I took a job with a simple picture and we were influencing and every sort of the film about them, the video and the film that you already watched up. Every single one of them out, and you know, you can have a little something with the video of the battery of the just, the video and the set of them, the video of the day of the even generally most of seven of the kid and which is like a but I didn't know that was a true though. You could think on the video of the earth and it's a family or a foot having to be more than a net, the refront of the original one of the thing. The only family knows in the lives of it, look like in here and home. Again, I tried to do better, it's the head of the different. Unit as answering in the first birthday that a little more to do this is the thing that's a different thing. You can look at each one of them for the records of things that have been in the past, the only thing that is more than different. You only think that. But there's like nothing to do that you just didn't look at it. You would have stayed and from the new with the phone. Anything that would have been in the most of the side of the same outlet, which I've taken in the way that it was there on hand. I would have said, but I could take it into the paper of place in the film. There's a creativity is spoken in a thing that it's in. You know, it's going to think that when it's the name, with digging in the hands for the thing with the channel and right. The infinite possibilities of the matter. If you're philosophy that your family things of how the future. The difficult thing with them from your answering that it's reflection of the name of the life and years of the return will to be that's seen from the practice program. And it's stuff like it. The better we can do the offensive, choosing frequency of the non must have a response to the event. They made a difference in doing it with the defense experience of the known better. You know, in it, fortunately, the mention of the doing that over the room in the church, and they were playing the same for them that the person was giving them. You never even make for a feeling with the facility. Think of the manager, the doctor at 12 for giving up future of the deputy in the profession. I guess I think that the logic and the professional certainly they were created. A person of that capacity is where it's transferred because of the frequency motion and like that, and then through there. Certainly, loving they are then that. If ever start feeling so you miss such a meaningless ways constantly doing this thing to mind. The first step is simply to be aware of the prophecy and of the mood to turn. Second is to adapt the truth to them with working and take them waste their head. It's only a true from use of the devil. In seemingly the truth of the Lord Father and parents for confinement, the seeming of the ability of those first circumstances with connecting with another with given. There is a sustained opportunity. The only principle someone should be to have no principle. To give me a threat towards any sort of an opportunity will greater than your good threat of it will be ongoing. I guess the study of history and theory involved me living in the world. The unit to contact the influence and how they develop. The brief moving of the craft was condition of the old region benefits. The clear war on set things and voices of religion in their own head. While education is not any problem, learning World War II the terms fighting the guns and effectively nuclear protect. When World Trade and Pete and Doctor, we might say that they were indoctrinated with theories of battle. Later in the campaign, they were joined by American troops who were much less educated in these tactics. Though the Americans began to fight in a way that was equal to mass appearance of the British thing. They adapted to the nobility of this new term of the combat. According to Field Marshal Irwin Williams himself, the leader of the training army looked back at the Americans suffered far more than the field from their exchange in Africa, thus confirming their accent that the cases in Israel and the education. What Roman meant was that education tends to go through such a man that are hard to see. In the midst of combat, true man-made pulse for behind, focusing more on those around the true acceptance of the battle. The Europeans with a music commission is often that to the ranking than even in all music. Their new needs for learning and liberated. Hitting your head of everything to you sound. If you even your master's idea of giving the notice to be educated by your having Spain. The best part of all, you will develop the own region most of this better depending on other people being the the last one is better than danger, even if you know that especially in mind, you will get told you get something that people share this joke and but the fact of lazy and the present, if you lost so many of these station where it says nothing about the last day, you did not have the victims of the attachment. Instead, do whatever you can to go away from your mind. During the game on wall, the girl women general around without had a single word done. After the successful campaign, he was convinced that it had actually been a failure. As a result, he now got driven by success and we never repeated the same strategy in the next battle. Rather, we had to think through each situation move. Suddenly, the fanatic baseball's greatest player holder made it through the wrong sign to forget his last at bat. Whether he got in the home run and strike out. He put it behind him, not so aggressive, saying we were against the same pitcher. We really wanted him to win. He was not worth it the next at bat and stuff together. The minute he got back to the background, started touching feeling was happening in between. Simply played. Attention to detail of the closing reply followed with fast letter, had the passing to get the last name. Keep the man moving, and literally where it's saving 99 to stop. They were opening new things and resort as much as them as possible. We learned fact because the world alone was excited of. We moved our first letter of said we would find some creative to get where we wanted. And they couldn't forget to find that something we fought for that. Had the British strategy for the term of the great Napoleon and Sasha were childlike in this respect. Sometimes, in fact, they even acted like children. The reason is simple. Superior strategies say things as they are. They are highly sensitive to danger and opportunity. Nothing stays within the life and treat freedom without their circumstances as they choose to carry a great deal of mental training from the interview. Their strategy do not act according to preconceived ideas. They respond to the moment, like children. Their minds are always moving and they are always excited and carried. They couldn't forget the past, but present words challenge a thing. The big thinker Aristotle felt that life was defined by religion. It did not move to death, but has still mobility and has more possibilities. Am I right? We all start out with the mobile mind of Napoleon that as we get older, we tend to become more efficacious, and we think that what we like to attract from the youth is. Your looks, your physical footing, receive pleasure for what you really need of the fluidity your mind will possess. Whenever you bring your thoughts revolving around a particular subject or idea, an obsession with them, first thing happens. That's it. Distract yourself with something else like a child. Find something to be observed by. Something worthy of pursuing attention. And all this time I'm thinking you cannot choose the influence, just keep moving. Throughout the history of warfare, there have been classic battlefields. The past has confronted the potential and the hopeless mismatch. It happened in the 7th century when the Persians and the Byzantines confronted the invisible armies of Islam. They can mutually death fighting. When the first half of the 13th century, when the Mongols had used the ability to overwhelm the heavy armies of the Russians and Europeans, while in 1850 when it finally forced the Persians at Jen. In each peak, the conquering army developed a way of fighting at maximum the influence technology or new social order. It can reproduce this effect in smaller scale by attuning itself to this better change, developing a technical trends that have yet to plus takes further study, as well as to flexibly able to adapt to those trends. As you get older, that is best to periodically wrap all choose now. In the order which are Hollywood, most actors have very short careers. A jump from a public figure system remains to have a remarkable long career by constantly changing his genre. Going from silent to more heroin to quickly. Instead of staying synchronically attached to tracks with big drum by sure with a sense of rising and of their effect. The constant adapting and changing of that we were avoid the pitfalls in the previous world. This is what people show they know they deal with change. The great Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky is still perfumed with the upset. Such a clear secret he would experience in many with intense ecstasy, which he described as a feeling of being suddenly floating in reality. The momentary living of the world exactly as it is. Later he would find himself getting into practice. This was being started out of the habits and routine of daily life. During these depression, wanting to tour but closely to reality came he would go through a near considering in the whole argument. Their reality would overcome every woman. Truthfully would see the going and still probably broken. He wouldn't even think everything. He would get creative and everything. This is the total to the delivery come to the sense of ecstasy back to the epilepsy. Then it's the method with a little bit, but sometimes you have to shake yourself up, break freaking enough over the path. This can take the thing of reversing free and reversing your trips and doing the opposite of what you usually do. Normally do in any given situation. Putting yourself in some unusual circumstances or literally starting over. In those situations, the mind has to deal with it moving on and the steps to mind. The change may be aligned with it, it also by the touch of your pressure, infinite similar. Relationship often develop a certain types of predictability. You do not, you do what you usually do. The other two reform the way even do in the round both. The universe put active in my manner, and you also the entire dynamic. Do that every single effort to better the relationship thought pattern and open it to new possibilities. Think of your mind as an army. Army gives the depth of the complexities and chaos of the modern world that it can fluid in the middle of it. The ultimate extension of the emergent guerrilla warfare, which exploits fear of a uniquely disordered and unpredictability of strategy. The guerrilla army never stops to defend particular opportunities. It won't fight all of them against staying against the back. The following notes that happens against the enemy military, the guerrilla army never repeats the same tactic. The response to the situation remains the terrain where it happens to find itself. There is no plan, no country line of communication with Japan. No slow-moving writing, the guerrilla army is filled with evidence. That is the model for a new way of thinking. The final factor will be the not let your mind settle into static conditions, depending on any particular place or idea, repeating the thing like what you knew. Attack promise the new aim of the deference and the balance that it's what we are given. By staying in constant motion, you show your inner interact doing that, and you explore the clear of the world with your supreme itself. There is never any value in fighting the last event, but while you're in the parties, the news to sing us and you must enable a good one in turn to listen. You're the left one that adapt to the family. Some of us still work for military and rest of it come out of the net, but come out like fighting like people out of the same that day. That's what we're from there. It's not even something that rag and data created in 1890, who thought the United States had get some control of the Indian Seaboard. But here are profits in America had been such a matter during the Vietnam period, and that with either a voted war that's over with fight. Fighting the single and trying to win the fight from the earth instead of it from the ground. You do not realize that the American military was ready for any kind of war. The name of the military battle may be 200 as that again, but may also learn from the experience and move on. We are in a set of caution, together, negative your enemies of fighting and ground. We went to tomorrow events, do not lose the threat alone. They turn them down with fighter. In the heated battle, the mindset stays in balance. Communicates completely with the same time we expect to separate doubt and give us them from the own mind. But the danger responding emotionally with clear, depression, and confusion. It is better to keep your pen in mind and similarly mental power than whatever certainty with. Being right to be good for emotional flow and memory. Staying decisive, confident in the person, no matter what it likes to. Make the mind something by exposing it to adversity. Learn to detect yourself in experience about it, but let all the big perhaps and look over your mind was feeling clear of their influence and keeping on first. And it's the moment that I found black. Vice Admiral Laird directing Nelson had been through it. He had lost a right eye in the scene of his and his right arm in the battle of Jamaica. He had defeated the Spanish at King Singles in 1787, putting the police objection to it by defeating a league at the Battle of Mount the following year. And under his tribulations and triumphs prepared him for the problems he faced in his own politics and opinions, namely, I beg to prepare to go to war against Denmark in February 1811. Nelson's England moved warrior with the August force to lead the fleet. Instead, the Admiralty chose to high party where Nelson was second in command. And this war was a delicate business, but was intended to force the discipline Danes to comply with the British that embarked on the shipping of military goods to France. The fearing Nelson was prone to this school. He voted Napoleon and he went too far against Queen Zeal to produce a diplomatic fiasco. So highly of the order and no figure, even some man who would do the job and nothing more. Nelson swallowed his heart and took the assignment, but he saw the trouble ahead. He knew that time was of the essence. The force of the Navy said the less chance Danes would have to build up the defenses. The ships were ready to sail. The perfect model of everything in good order? What was in the style area? Nelson hated his intelligence and burned for action. He reviewed intelligence reports, studying maps, and dreaming with a detailed paper playing the Danes. He wrote to Parker, urging him to seize the initiative. Parker ignored him. At last, in March 11, the British fleet set sail. Instead of heading for Copenhagen, however, Parker anchored well to the north of the city's harbor and called a meeting of the captains. According to the intelligence report, he explained the Danes had prepared elaborate defenses for Copenhagen. The boats anchored in the harbor coast the north and south, and mobile artillery batteries to blast the British out of the water. How to fight this artillery without terrible losses? Also, pilots who knew they wanted their own Copenhagen reported that they would set British figures of sandbarking to prevent navigating these dangers under bombardment of the harrowing. With all of these difficulties, perhaps it was best to wait for the Danes to leave harbor and then fight them in the sea. Nelson struggled to control himself. Finally, he let leave. Pacing the room, the story was lost and joking as he spoke. No war, he said, had ever been won by waiting. The days became the passive look formidable. To those who have children and want, but he had worked out a strategy with failure. He would attack himself, the easy approach. While Parker and reserved were state specific, Nelson would use his ability to take up the advanced. He had studied the match sample for enough threats. As for the wounds, aggressive action was more important than trenching the wings. Nelson's speech only energized focus captain. He was that far the master's escalator. And that's confident was touching. Even Sir High was present, the frame was approved. The next morning, Nelson found the ship's advance authority and the battle began. The Danish things firing in the British at close range took it to a cave. Nelson paced the deck of his flagship, HMS Elephant, everything had been on. He was in an excited, almost ecstatic state. The shot of the main mast nearly hit him. They didn't warm work, and this day may be the last to any of it at any moment before the moment, a little shaken up by the blast. To mark you, I will not be asked for the goblins. Parker followed the battle to his positions to the north. He now regretted agreeing to Nelson's food. He was responsible for the campaign and the defeat of fear which would ruin his career. After 4 hours of back and forth environment, he had seen enough. The fleet had taken a beating and had gained no advantage. Nelson never knew to quit. Parker decided it was time to the first city Flight 39. The order that would go. The first ship to sail which will be on the path to setting on down the line. Once again, there was nothing else to do but retreat. The battle was over. On board the Elephant, the lieutenant to Nelson about the signal. The vice admiral with another continued to pound the damage on defensive. He eventually caught too much. Is number 16 still faithful? Number 16 was his own flight and then engaged the enemy more closely. The officer confirmed that the flight was still filling. Mind you, many people say nothing turbine. A few minutes later, Focus signals still flapping and will bring Molson true to his flight captain. You know, Phil, I have only one eye. I have a right to be blind sometimes. And raising his telescope to his blind eye, he calmly remarked, I really do not see the signal. Torn between obeying Parker and obeying Nelson, the fleet captain chose Nelson. They will risk their careers along under orders. But soon the beam reached the further side of the crack. Soon the ship anchored in the harbor surrendered, and the firing of the guns began to slow. Less than an hour after Parker signaled the stop the battle being surrendered. The next day, Parker punctually congratulated Nelson on the victory. He did not mention his support in his disobedience. He was hoping the whole affair, including his own lack of courage, would be quietly forgotten. In the ambulance, he put his fate in Surhide, a middle-class military error, and encountered the regional right to manning his careful and methodical. Separately, he seemed pioneers formal sense of things, credential control of the management. And even they think things to appropriately prepare a chair for the nuclear state. And what that might mean for them in the front. They didn't come on until they are tested in battle. Suddenly they cannot move the position. They see falling everyone, the foot in the small setback. They leave back not out of patient but out of fear. Often these moments of hesitation fell their doom. Lord Nelson operated opposed to the opposite principle. Sad and book that a delicate constitution compensated for its physical abuse by the fears of determination. The projects were to be more or less illegal anyone around us. The moment he entered battle, he reacted up to the aggressive impulses. Where other sailors worried about casualties and when choosing the enemy's formation, they concentrated on his front. Before battle, Naval strategized for studying his opponent more turtle. The models helped Nelson was sent when the enemy was ready to crumble. But once the engagement began, hesitation and carefulness would drop. Predator Man is a kind of counterbalance to mental rhythms to our own tendency to get emotional and with perspective in the heat of battle. Our greatest weakness is moving the fight, doubting yourself, becoming unnecessary profit. The emotional was not only new, that is just a strength out of fear of fear, but a making instinct. It really is a deadline that they resolve. An anticipation of confidence. I will say that the plan that left. The moments of turmoil and until you must force yourself to be more determined. All of the aggressive energy removing will come positive in your ship. Any mistakes sooner, you can correct it by more energetic actions there. Save your coping for that hour of preparation, but once the fighting begins to bring to the man belts, and mobile to throw any step that we call to retreat. While doing an attack me, and momentum of turning through. The sense of making more vivid impression on the mind than systematic thought. Even the man from the operation now sees the being carried out meanwhile in the front end of earlier judgment. War have a way of mastering the stage with the scenery cool and better with fearsome operations. Once they just cleared away the horizon between them obstructed development of the planes of their conviction. This is one of the great that shows the chance between family and institution. Watching a movie directed Alfred Hitchcock, 1899 to 1980, had worked on a film series helping kept surprised those seeing it before time. Most of North Rowling rumbled doubts of energy, learning that the crew and working out over that Hitchcock was considered share symptoms of building will at least the design of the code. On the set, his fingers on the string. Made in 1951, the actor formulated Graham thought his type behavior meant to be was angry or upset after the interview was on. Elders verified stating on some work. The police complains on after the crew complains the actor's tantrum, Luther placed on David just gone. Shooting is truly even the problem. Hitchcock didn't seem to director at all. In the active Monday operated through the Disney Youth and Modern Build Brand, any magic smell on stuff. There was hard for Hitchcock falling to understand how a man doing such stressful work could stay so feeling the time. Some thought it was a part of his character, but there was something inherently football. Others thought it was a game to get put on. He suspected the truth. Before the filmmaking matter ever even began, Hitchcock would have to pressure with such intense attention to detail. Then nothing took very long. He was completely in control, no temperamental action, no kind of art director, no muttering for people could upset him to feel with a plan. He needs to glance at his security and what feeling etc. He could have put some line back and fall asleep. Hitchcock started began with failing on whether from a novel or an idea of the one. If the one had a moment to get during the set, he would begin to visualize the point. Next to was done meeting with a writer review. He would like this job was like an order. Instead of taking some forgiveness had a great idea and turning it into a screenplay, the writer was simply able to put on paper the dream chapter of Hitchcock's mind. Here she would add flesh and bones to the characters and would have forthright dialogue, but not much to cause. When Hitchcock sat down with the writer saying chamber for the first script meeting on the movie vertical, the descriptions of several scenes were so with some sense that the experience seemed almost to have been real, and no one something he had dreamed. That's completely the version for force creative comfort. Establishing that although he was writing the script, it would remain a Hitchcock creation. Once the screenplay was finished, Hitchcock would transform it into an elaborate shooting script. The blocking channel with this blocking channel positions landing and setting it with cut out and detail much. No director lead themselves simulated for shooting the scene from several angles, for example, to give the film editor option to work with later on. Not Hitchcock. He essentially edited the entire thing in the shooting script. He knew exactly what he wanted and wrote it down. If a producer had to try to add or change the scene, Hitchcock was hourly present. He could afford to simply listen, but inside he was totally unmoved. Nothing without the chance. To the building of the set, fire, elaborate and near like rear window. Hitchcock would present the prediction. The production design made a precise blueprints, bold plans, and put them in the detail list of things. He supervised every aspect of the secretaries, and he was particularly attentive to the closing of leading after him. According to Edith Harris, he said, custom of many Hitchcock's movies, including Val and Familiar. In 1954, there were a movie for every color, every style, and he was absolutely saying about everything he said on it. The one scene he started was telling in the Calgary for another in one Chicago for another in there. He was literally putting a dream together in the studio. The actress Kate Nolan refused to wear a great suit and vertical because she felt it made her look much better. Hitchcock told her he wanted her to look like a woman and Mr. Woman who had just stepped out of the San Francisco club. How could she argue with that? She wanted to. Hitchcock acted from working over in stage Jeff President, senior Hollywood best, Joseph Conley, Jake Story, Terry Grant, Peter Brennan, said that he was the easy director to work for. The young Toronto was captain, since his film had set taking stage had much to depend on the actor performance and minute of sitting a scene, which relaxed. Everything went like clockwork. If Jones Steele told the cast of the man who moved to work, wearing hands on his and it's the believe the dual himself he was doing the booking of the film. As Hitchcock sat calmly on the set, apparently have a sleep, the cast and crew could see only the smoke for each one plate. They had no idea how everything fell into a river. The Taylor saw verdict for the first thing ever had seen another man frame. The film needed to consider the version Hitchcock had expressed to him many months before. The first film Hitchcock directed was The Pleasure Garden, a silent film made in 1925. The production went long in every considerable way. Hitchcock hated harassing disorder. He expected events panicked human that did anyone could show made in the middle. From that point on, he decided he would see filmmaking as a military operation. He would give his producers, actors, and crew more room to mess up what he wanted to create. He taught himself every after the film production, except the ceremony, the technicalities and cameras and lenses, editing and sound. He ran in the stage of the first input. Now, more shadow could fall between the friendly and the distant. Without machine controlling their awareness the way which they might not seem like putting their mind, but it actually takes the quality to the singer. Then eventually the battle. In Hitchcock's case of Thanksgiving. Then come ready. Subject to the pain, but you will have foreseen them in cloud of alternative, and you are ready to respond. Their mind will never go blank in a develop well prepared. In your calling, they will argue with doubts, anxious questions, and slipshod ideas. And even though you're not in between some listen, they really will ignore you all thought them in advance, and really like the man of true changes to other people, make them easier than man of concern. It is easy to be overwhelmed by everything that brings you in battle. There are so many people are asking or telling you what to do. So many vital members press unknown that you can set up your goals and your plans. Suddenly you cannot see the perfect truth. Understand perfect in mind of the ability to detach yourself from all that, to seek up a battle for the hood picture. You're crazy. All the generals have this quality. Or gives it that mention this with your preparation, nurturing the use of performance. Let people think the better life attack you come from some things so the less they understand the better. Sixteen.
Thank